What's going on out there, folks? Welcome on into the final regular season edition of Over and Back. If you don't know now, I'm your host, Dan Alexander, and excited for another great guest coming on. If you need the rankings and the drip metrics, this guy's got you on lock. We got Diggs coming on the show, and you can follow him on socials at Diggs Tape. Let's be real, you're probably following him already. Diggs, happy to finally get you on, my man. What's going on, brother?
Ain't nothing to it, Dan. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it for a minute. It's last regular season. Let's fire it up.
Absolutely. I can't, 10 weeks have just flown past and way less bye weeks than we had last year where, you were guessing, is there a game this
Thankfully.
week? Is there a game the next 2 weeks? So just thoughts heading in here to the final week of the season. If people, it's their first time joining us, we're going to run down each and every game on the slate, all four of them, talk some playoff implications, but man, I think the big takeaway for me is I'm just shocked that Cannons are still alive with how their season has gone. We're heading into the last week of the season and they could still make the playoffs. That alone is what the hell is going on this year, bro?
Right? That's insane. I just how chaos are keeping them in it almost. It's no one really thought that chaos would be A, the team to keep them in it, or B, that a team with where they still only have one win that they would still be in the running, I just really figured chaos would be, at least in the top five at this point in the season. But
And that was the thing, heading into the year, we knew that Chaos was going to struggle out of the gate, but just the fact that we keep waiting for that, oh, well, don't worry, they'll put it together at the end of the year, that's got to happen now. It's heading into the final week, and it's a perfect thing to start here right at the top. We'll get into our quick sticks here and start with this Atlas and Chaos game. Atlas 1.5 point favorites, total 24.5. And it's funny because we talked about Chaos at the top, but really the reason why I put Atlas first, because anybody who follows you on social knows you've been going through it the last 2 weeks. So, Diggs, before we started recording, I told you this is a safe space, my man. So rant away, it's bounce back time for Atlas, right?
dead ass. I might need to brew me some chamomile tea before I start talking about this, man. Come on, bro. We were what, 4-1, 5-2, now 5-4, headed towards the middle of the table. It's just tough, man. You see that roster, you see, what Jeff Teat's doing, the perfect complement with Chris Gray on the other side, Eric Law directing shit at X. It should be popping off. And it's just, there's a lot of things that are we're just making a lot of small mistakes, sometimes in the middle of the field, sometimes on defense, sometimes the offense isn't really clicking. And honestly, I still feel like the Bulls midfield, we don't have a group of three midfielders that we run out every time. We have five middies, and it's any combination of those five. And I can see sometimes that the chemistry isn't all there like it is with other teams if they send out their top three. I don't know. I'm not a professional lacrosse player or coach, but from what I see, it's just man, if we just had a set of three that worked really well together, we could be up there with Whips. Honestly, that's what I think.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, with Atlas is it's kind of been these peaks and valleys. In this last 2 weeks, I mean, you follow them through and through. I just see them every week, how they're doing against the spread, watch all the games, obviously. But, this is, I guess you could say, for a team that hasn't even come close to rock bottom, this past 2 weeks has been their bottom, highlighted with what happened with Whips last week, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's take a second here. Let's sidebar for a minute. I am grateful that this is our rock bottom, right?
Fair.
After 2019, after 2020.
Yeah, that's true.
We're still trending up. Those are my boys, win or lose. I'm gonna ride with the Bulls. I'm gonna die with the Bulls. And if this is rock bottom, I'm grateful for it. But I just to be Chrome 6-3 or to be right under Whips, even 7-2, whatever. I just feel like we're right there.
Heading into this game, you could argue, sure, Chaos are going to be more motivated because, they need to end it. But at the end of the day, Atlas needs to bounce back the same because Chaos, in all reality, they're clinging on to that 7 seed. They don't really have to win. It's not a must win. It's more just a don't get blown out. So how do you see this game from a motivation standpoint? You think Atlas are feeling that bounce back a little bit more, or Chaos, it's do or die time, let's go?
Honestly, I think Chaos plays with a bigger chip on their shoulder. I mean, look at Coach AT, right? They always play with a chip on their shoulder. That's just how they're built. I think Atlas is they're just fighting for a better spot in the playoffs, honestly, and that's going to motivate them. But Coach Rubio is definitely going to motivate them to have a better spot in the playoffs and to end the regular season on a high note. Like 6-4, not a bad place to be. You're still ahead of Redwoods. You're still ahead of, could end up ahead of Water Dogs. Still, they slipped up last week, so the motivation's there for both teams. And again, for Chaos, is about A, not getting blown out, and B, going into the playoffs with some pride. So I see it as like a 2 or 3 goal win for Atlas, because like Atlas they're not going to blow them out, because the offensive chemistry, and like not only the offensive chemistry, but the way we balance the field end to end and line to end line, it matches up well enough with how Chaos has been doing. Like Chaos hasn't really been getting blown out recently. They've been keeping games close. So I think Chaos will keep it close.
All right, Chaos keeping it close, but Atlas maybe just pulling away at the end. I'm sure people who are back in Atlas 1.5 are hoping maybe Chaos pull Blaze Reardon out for a little extra cover, just dump in an empty netter right there at the end of the 1-goal game. That's the way to get home a cover right there. Well, speaking of potential out-of-net situations, that was Cannons last week. We cashed a ticket with Cannons, getting the 2.5 goals in an in-game line, because they were able to just, at least keep the ball around the net. So let's get into this Whip Snakes game. Whip Snakes 2.5-point favorites, laying the lumber despite not really having anything to play for in the final week of the season. They have the 1 seed locked up. They can improve their positioning. They're already in the championship series that's going to be coming during the winter. So total 23.5 in this one. It might not be a must win for Chaos in the game we just talked, but like this is a literal must win for Cannons, right?
Absolutely. Cannons have to win this game. They got to find some way to compete with Chaos for that 7 seed. And I honestly don't really see it.
You think because that's the thing heading into this game. Like when I first saw this line open and saw Whips as such big favorites, like playing underdogs has been a great play in the PLL because these games are so close, but what have the Cannons showed us that make us be like, oh yeah, they can keep it close against the Whips, especially what you just saw against your Atlas last week?
Yeah, I think if against any other team, Cannons have a shot, because against a lot of other teams, Cannons have been competitive, and then they let that gap kind of slip away from them at certain points in the game. Other times they're very competitive, but Whips, man, you're talking about like maybe the best professional field lacrosse defense ever. Like, go back and look at all of the great defensive teams. Like, they're insane. They're insane defensively. So it's like, Cannons have weapons, but it's something about the middle of their field and their defense. Like, Coach Staggs is going to keep Whips motivated. Like, no. Like, this isn't no rest your starters. Like, we're going to play and we're going to win. Like, we may not win by 10, but like, we're going to win this game. Like, let's get our stuff together. Let's go into the playoffs strong.
Well, and I saw this social share earlier today on the Whips Twitter page that was Staggs saying just that. Like after the game, he was like, "Next week, like it ain't sweet. Like no, we're going in there to win the game. Like we're not just yeah." So it was just shared. We're recording here on a Wednesday. It was earlier today, and I was kind of hoping heading into this game, maybe bettors would have a chance to sweep in on the Cannons because Whips will rest some players. But he was like, "You guys are going to be playing. I'm going to be wanting something out of you." So Staggs is coming into this because what I was going to ask you was like, is there any shot to the Whips resting players at some point in this game? I think Staggs answered it for us. And I even think before that, you probably thought just the way that this Whips team is, like, they're not a take the pedal, lighten up off the pedal, take the foot off the pedal kind of team, even in a who cares game for them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think if anything, you see the 19, like you see the 19 net dress, maybe you see a little different. Like you see, maybe Nards will take less face-offs or, something like that. Like maybe Keegan Khan gets more run. Maybe Jackson Reed gets more run. But as far as like sitting Earhart, sitting Brad Smith, sitting Bernlord, not going to happen. He wants those guys sharp. He wants their go-getters sharp for the playoffs. That's what's going to happen.
Well, and there's a bye week heading into quarterfinals, and they already punched their tickets to semifinals. So it wouldn't just be 1 week of rust, 2 weeks of rust. That would be if these starters don't play 3 weeks, that they would just be sitting on the sideline, and Stags ain't letting that happen.
Nah,
Last note on this game, Diggs, before we get into our total talk segment, talk a little Chrome and Redwoods. I just like throwing out these numbers just because it quantifies kind of what we see with our eyes and the parity in this league. So underdogs this season, if you just blindly bet them against the spread as 1.5 and 2.5 point dogs, are 22-14. So it's a little bit less than we saw last year, but underdogs are still, almost a 2-to-1 bet here. However, out of those 22 games, man, 4 of them were the Cannons. The Cannons are just 4 and 5 against the spread. So they're almost like the exception to the rule as underdogs. So when this game first opened on Barstool Sportsbook, they put up a 3.5 Whips favored. And I was like, you got to rush in. You got to bet that. It disappeared. But even at 2.5, I'm sweating a little bit because you could roll out the 3s against Whip Snakes and they could beat the Cannons by 3 goals, by 4 goals. Like, am I crazy to think
facts.
that? Yeah,
No,
that's what I'm saying.
I was just texting my friend today. He's a Whips fan because he's a Maryland fan through and through. So he's a Whips fan. We were just talking about how, like, Whips is stacked top down. Like, Jacobois is playing well. Keegan Khan is playing well. Like, all their offensive rookies are producing. Like, you don't have to play Matt Rambo for 4 quarters to beat Cannons by 3. You just don't. Like, they have too much firepower.
So if you want to ride the trends, I don't know, Cannons, you might need some antacid to do it, maybe a little Tums, because it ain't going to be easy against the Whip Snakes. That's for sure. Let's talk this Saturday game, man. We got Chrome taking on Redwoods. Chrome are the 1.5 point favorites. Total in this one, 23.5. Now, in our total talk, we obviously want to look at these over and unders, and I just want to get your thoughts just as far as from a scoring, potential for either of these teams, because the Redwoods, they've historically, the past few seasons, it's been like defense, slow pace of play. Dude, these guys have been cashing overs like crazy. The team's now 6-3 to the over this year. In the last 4 weeks, since Pinnell's kind of been dicing and being more of a facilitator, he had like 8 points last week. The team themselves, 16, 12, 15, 14 the last 4 weeks. So are the Chrome and Scanoni the kind of offense or the defense that's finally going to be able to stifle this Redwoods team, or do you see some goals piling up in this one?
Oh, man. Well, as someone who doesn't bet on a lot of things, what did you say the line was? You said 23.5?
So we're looking at 23.5. Redwoods are 6-3 to the over. However, Chrome 7-2 to the under. So it's like worlds colliding on this one, man. Like that's why it's a good ass number, but that 23.5 seems low.
I'm taking the over, honestly, because Chrome has shown that their offense is better than it's ever been in the team's history. Like, Nick turning whiz, you add Scary Terry coming down the middle on 54s, just cashing things whenever he wants. Like, they can score in transition. They can score 6-on-6. They can score man up. I don't know what their man up percentage is, but it just seems like, a 6-3 team, you're probably hovering at least above 30% on man up. So it's like, I'm going to take the over because Redwoods are going to find ways to score. Ryder is on fire. Pinnell is on fire. Nakai is finally coming into his own, and he's drawing doubles and dishing. Miles is hitting shots. Like, Miles is finally starting to trend towards his 2021 numbers. Like, it's going to be a shootout. I really don't think this is going to be a defensive game, even though Chrome kind of ups Redwoods on defense, and as the betting says. But I think this is going to be a shootout, and it's going to be a close game. But I'm taking Chrome in the over.
So the crazy thing is, though, you mentioned all those names that are finally coming on down the stretch for Redwoods, and it's all true. And then you also have on the midfield Charlie Bertrand, who's just been lighting it up, dude. The last 2 weeks, it's hard to argue, maybe outside of Rob Pinnell, offensively, a player who's had a better stretch down the end here. He had 3 goals last week. He had 4 the week before. And we're looking at a total goal for Bertrand of 1.5. So you think he can stay hot? Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed on that Redwoods team, but in an over game that we think is going to be going over, because I'm right there with you, even with the fact that the Chrome are 7-2 to the under. 5 of those unders came with a 23.5 total. I just think this game script in the final week of the season for two teams who could potentially, at least improve their seeding or
Yep.
just make themselves feel a little bit better heading on into the playoffs. I just think in a game where you think it's going over, you could potentially see some player props going over. I look at like that Charlie Bertrand number. I look at Rob Pennell. He's been stacking up assists like crazy. He had 6 assists last week. You can get over 2.5 assists plus 1.5 or 125, excuse me. So if we think this is going over, we should probably try and find some player props we like over too, right? Or just take the over and don't get crazy here. Like, talk me out of some shit here, Diggs.
No, I mean, you said Charlie Bertrand is the goal total for him is 1.5. Dude, over.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's crazy to me.
He's been their best initiator. Like, give me something that's hard to consider. Give me 2.5. Give me 3. Like something that's more difficult to consider than 1.5. Dude, over. Come on. You think he's not going to score 2 goals? He's their best initiator. He scored from 14, damn near 15 on the run last game. Like, he was half a step. He was half a shooting motion away from scoring from 2 on the run. Like he Romar Dennis or some shit, but like he's their best initiator. He's going to score points. So take that. Definitely take that.
Well, what you just saw live on air here was what we call enabling. And I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Now I know I'm going to take this over. I'm going to go over Rob Pennell. I'm going to go over Charlie Bertrand. Yeah. So now I don't have to worry. How about on this Chrome side? Because I think Chrome is the team, them and Atlas, that I have a really hard time figuring who's going to have the big week any given week. Like Nick Turn over 2.5 assists. He can score still though too. So maybe attacking points wise, like, do you see any Chrome player that could potentially have a stylistic matchup, or are you like me, like Chrome, just try and, draw straws and decide who you think is going to have a big day? Cause it could be anyone on that offense.
That's a great point with Chrome. I mean, especially if we're just talking about Nick Turn, like his points are very matchup dependent. Like if you put the right matchup on him, it really limits his ability to score points. But I don't say that to take away from his value, right? Because if we step away from points, like his value is like cannot be questioned on that offense. He is always doing something, anything to make that offense go. So I don't know, like it depends on who they put on him. Like, are they going to put Apple on him? Like his goals go down. Are they going to put, Cohen on him? Maybe his assists go down. So like, it's really matchup dependent. And Chrome is one of those teams where like someone's going to get hot. It could be Wiz scoring 5 goals or, it could be the midfield stepping up and everyone gets 2 goals apiece in the midfield. You just never know how it's going to happen with Chrome. And like you said, Atlas is a lot of the same way because family style, right? They don't really lean on one guy to score the point. It ends up being T coming in with 5 or 6 points a game, but that's because A, he's so damn good, and B, he plays so many different roles in the office inside 13 yards. He's unbelievably versatile. But other than that, it's hard to bet on any one player with Atlas or Chrome. They're kind of similar in that way. So you're right.
And I also think one little sneaky thing, and then we're going to get into our angle of the week before HR pops in the break room and is like, Diggs, you got to stop shooting the shit with Newbie in there. We got to get you back to work, bro. So I ain't getting you fired today. But last thing I wanted to mention that kind of like sneaky helps our over. And I hate to say it because obviously you want all these players on the field, and I wish the best for Glazner. But Glazner, that injury last week, that's a solid part of this Redwoods defense that now when you're talking about matchup dependent stuff, that's one less guy that's going to be able to slide, that's going to be able to maybe stifle a Wisnauskas on the wing or something. So that Glazner injury could be the sneaky part that makes this over look that much nicer. Again, I'm not trying to add in a player injury to say, oh, I like my bet so much, but it is a factor that this defense without Glazner could potentially be struggling a little bit. You know what I mean?
It's a different defense without, he's the vocal leader of the defense, right? He might be the second or third defenseman. He's not your top cover guy, but like he basically runs the defense. It's 50% him, 50% the goalie, whereas on a lot of other teams, the goalie runs the defense. Like, no, Glaze is doing a lot of that. He's doing a lot of traffic control. So yeah, that does make it different, especially for this Redwoods team that as long as they've been around has had him to really direct the defense. So we're looking at a slightly different defense. Yeah, that's a good point.
Love it, brother. It's angle of the week time. Final game that we have to chat about here. If you agree, if you disagree, hop on in those comments below. We'd love to hear from you and your thoughts. And of course, hit me with a follow on Twitter at Newbie Talks and follow my man Diggs at Diggs Tape. Archers, 1.5 point favorites, taking on the Water Dogs, 24.5. I saved this one for last because not only does it have potential seeding implications for this week, it essentially is going to decide who's in the championship series, who's out of the championship series between these two teams. So I don't know, man. I think I just look at this matchup and see a little bit of recency bias in the fact that we're looking at Archers being favored, because Water Dogs, they finally lose after they won 5 straight games. And, sure, it was some overtime games here. Maybe they had some lucky breaks, whatever you want to say. They won those games and they finally lose. You look at the other sideline, Archers finally win a game after 2 straight losses. And one of those losses, they couldn't even muster up 9 goals. So I don't know. A little head scratching to me to see Archers favored. Like, do you think that's legit, or how would you kind of decide which team you think has the advantage coming into this one?
I think, to borrow a term from the internet, Water Dogs got that dog in them this season, man. Like when I saw that matchup against when I saw Atlas was going to play Water Dogs, I was like, oh man, that's the hungriest team in the league. Like I'm just nervous about them, like, going into the playoff run. And not to say that Archers, obviously doesn't have A, something to prove, or B, statistically one of the best offenses in league history. But like, if you take into all considering factors, I got the Water Dogs in this one. Whether it's over or under, I don't really know, because which Water Dogs team shows up. They're just like, they play 10-on-10 lacrosse. Like, Water Dogs isn't a 6-on-6 team. They're a 10-on-10 team. So it's like, you don't really know which side of the Water Dogs is really going to come in and dominate that game. Could be the over, could be the under. I'm still taking Water Dogs to win. Win by 2? I don't know. Could be a 1-point game. So if you're betting, man, Archers still might be a good bet if they're 1.5-point favorites, because Water Dogs by 2, I think that's a really good win for Water Dogs to win by 2 in the last week of the season and get a better playoff standing. This is a close one.
Well, and that's the thing, is I almost thought, like, my eyes were deceiving me. When I saw that the Archers were the favorites in this game, I was just scratching my head, because just like you, I think the Water Dogs, if you just look at the summation of the season, okay, they started off with 4 losses, but then those 5 straight wins, they looked like the best team in the league outside of, obviously, Whipsnakes. Like, that's always the caveat. The Whipsnakes are always around that convo. But, like, if you just take the entire season, Water Dogs have had the more impressive whole season for me than this Archers team.
Agreed.
So I'm right there with you. Give me that 1.5 with the Water Dogs, because I think they could win this game outright. So I think we'll take that 1.5. We'll do a little sprinkle on the money line. We get both of those home. We're feeling pretty, because I also think the Water Dogs showed last year, and it's not like a 1-to-1, but just your thoughts, the fact that they turned it on at the end of the year. They ended up as the 1 seed last year. So there's signs in this locker room, and all of that was without Michael Sowers. So you have a team that can turn it on at the end, that now has a very vocal leader. Anytime they do those in the huddles, it's like Sowers. He's just like, Copeland, get out of my way and let me tell you what we're doing here, because this is how we're going to run this offense. I just think heading into the playoffs, this could be one of the scarier teams if they put it all together. I think this last week will tell you a lot about maybe the Water Dogs, and a good amount about the Archers too. Do you agree with that?
Couldn't agree more. I think this will probably be the defining game for Water Dogs as they go into the playoffs. If they lose this game, I think it's 70-30. They don't advance in the playoffs. If they win this game, I think it's 70-30. They do. I think Water Dogs is one of the more like confidence dependent teams. Like that run of 5 straight wins. Like, you can see it. Like, you can see in their body language when they come out with like their 3rd win, their 4th win, like that overtime game where they came back and Connor Kelly scored the game winner, like super improbable. That's that team's ethos. Like, they're very like emotion driven. And I think if they can really get A, the matchups they want, and B, if they can just really limit how much Archers like makes them slide and recover. If they can limit that, they'll win by 2. I think so.
I like it, man. I like it a lot. I think we have a lot of agreement, which kind of scares me. Whenever like we're seeing like eye to eye with my guests, like it's worked out for us. Like me and Dan Arestia were cashing tickets like crazy last week. So let's make it back-to-back weeks where we get some Lax Twitter gold going right here. So last thing I have for you, Diggs, like you mentioned those stylistic matchups, like anyone that you see here on either side, because I'm swearing off betting Archers player props, because whenever I think Eamon's finally going to bounce back, he kills me and loses by the hook. Whenever I think Manny's going to look like how he did the first few weeks of the season, he kills me, he loses by the hook. So I'm swearing off Archers player props, but Could you make a case for anybody, water dogs or archers, that you might think coming into this week has a potential big week, just stylistically?
Kieran McCardle. He's a top 5 player in the league.
Yeah,
right
why
now.
not? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just bet Kieran McCardle or overs, and you've cashed more than you haven't this year.
He is killing kids this year. I mean, he's been nice since St. John. Let's just put that out there. Like he was nice there. He's All-American at St. John's. Killed it with the Florida Launch. Now he's with the Water Dogs, killing cats. Like safe bet. Like but other than that. Like if you're swearing off archers, that's fine. I was gonna say Will Manny, but because that's just my dude. He catches checks from the wing.
He was my pick to win MVP, and I was like strutting my stuff after the first 4 weeks. 13 goals in 4 weeks. I was like, I told y'all. I told you it was going to be Will Manny, and then he started selling the bag. But that's my guy, too. I think he's an absolute dog. It's kind of been interesting to see that tale of two halves of this season. Really, since Eamon's come back in, he's been a little bit more of a facilitator, more of an off-ball guy than what he was doing early in the year, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely still recovering from injury. Thank God they got Matt Moore. I think Connor DeSimone was very serviceable. It's almost like if you need something more than what Grant Amen is giving you coming off injury, do you dress DeSimone and put him back in there? I don't know. But as far as like, individual who do you bet on, it's either McCardle or I can't see anybody else in the Water Dogs that I want to bet on. Maybe Connor Kelly. He's been really hot. Other than that, it's kind of family style over there too. Sometimes Ethan Walker has 3 or 4 points. Sometimes he has 1, but like they figure it out. So I don't know.
Kieran McCardle total 3.5 points. I like that over too, man. I mean, 3.5 points, 2 assists, 2 goals. I mean, that's slight work for Kieran McCardle. So plenty of actionable info. My man Diggs been dropping all show long. So we got some overs. We got some underdogs we like. So Diggs, I know you're not much of a betting guy, but you're welcome back on Over and Back anytime. You always bring the gas. Let people know where they can follow you, where they can find your content, because you crush it, man.
Appreciate you. I'm just at Dave Staple on Twitter. I was making Instagram videos a couple of years ago. So if you want my archives, you can go watch those videos at Dave Staple on Instagram, but mostly just tweeting. So yeah, I'm gonna see you on the internet, man.
Absolutely. And anyone who's rocking rope hats, you got my man Diggs to thank for that one. So keep on rocking them. Appreciate you, man. That does it for another week of us here on Over and Back. For my co-host today, Diggs, I'm Dan Alexander. Make sure you bet responsibly, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks for quarterfinals. We'll see you then on Over and Back.